Good evening, CCOG family and friends. My name is Mrs. Murray, and welcome to week 3 of CCOG Summer Enrichment. Last week, we had the privilege of hearing a lesson about context clues from Mrs. Drew. And this week, I'm coming to bring you another lesson that will be very helpful for those of you who are wanting to get better at your reading. Before we even jump into today, and everything that I have to share with you, I want to go ahead and give a shout out to a couple of students that we noticed on last week that were either watching the video or they were commenting or they were participating in some way, shape, or form with the resources available to parents. So I want to give a shout out to Ari, to Braylon, to Brendan, to Bryson, and to Ajane. Thank you guys for watching and participating. We hope that you're on this week again too, and we hope that you are enjoying our resources that we're providing for you for free. Parents, please get your kids plugged in. This is free tutoring. No cost associated for you all. So we have some of the best educators in Wayne County that are providing these reading lessons to you, and we hope that they are being beneficial. Before we jump into the lesson for today, I want to do a quick recap of the book that we've been reading for 3rd through 5th grade. It is The Watsons Go to Birmingham 1963, written by Christopher Paul Curtis. Now, I've really been enjoying this book, and if you're like me and your schedule's a little bit busy, you may be like, Miss Murray, this just a little bit too much, right? Like my big kids will say, this is a little bit too much. But we break it down into smaller chunks so that we can understand it. Also, if the paper copy is too much for you, try listening to it. Putting it in a different format, like audio, can allow your brain to receive the content that is inside of this book without having to actually slow down, sit down, and open up the actual book. Yesterday, matter of fact, I was doing a walk and I had my headphones in and I was listening to a couple chapters while I was walking. Parents, if you're driving in the car, you can get the book on Audible and play the book for your child. I always tell my kids and parents who are asking me, how do I make my child a better reader? And I tell them to read more. That's one of the problems that I see. We just don't read enough. And so any way that you can get it in, get it in. This week, we are continuing with The Watsons Go to Birmingham. And I want to just go ahead and recap chapters 1 through 7, give a quick summary retell about each of the chapters so that even if you aren't reading the book, you can still feel caught up. So let's talk about chapter 1 for a minute. Chapter 1. That's when we're introduced to the Watsons. We're introduced to Daniel, he's the dad, Willona, who's the mom, Byron, who's the oldest Watson sibling. They call him a juvenile delinquent, so that tells us that he gets in trouble. Then we're also introduced to Kenny, who's the middle child. He's trying to find his way, as well as the baby Watson, Joetta. Her nickname is Joey. We learn that the setting of the book is in Flint, Michigan, at least in the beginning. And it's very, very cold in Michigan. And I can attest to that. Miss Murray is from Michigan, born and raised, and it is very cold a lot of the time. But mom is not born and raised in Michigan. She's actually coming from Alabama. And so down south, it is definitely warmer than it is in Michigan. And the first chapter, we really just learned about how it's really, really cold. And Byron and his personality is exposed in that chapter 2 because he is just so self-absorbed. And while they're cleaning off the snow on the car, he decides that he wants to kiss his reflection in the side mirror, and then his lips get stuck to the mirror. Chapter 2. In chapter 2, we learn that Kenny has a little bit of issues in school because number 1, he's very smart and he's a good reader. And so they call him Poindexter. And number 2, he has a lazy eye. One of his eyes are lazy. And so it talks a lot about how he has to struggle with that and deal with that, and how he figures out how to look at people so that his eye doesn't look so lazy. But we're introduced to a new student. This new student is named Rufus, and he is coming from the South. And Kenny feels like, oh, my savior is here, because they're not going to pick on me anymore. They're going to pick on Rufus because he's new and he's Southern. Well, Rufus is not only Southern. One thing we can infer about him is that him and his family may be poor. And the reason that we can make that inference is because of a clue from the text. In the text, it tells us that Rufus would come to school every day with the same old tattered clothes, as well as he would not have a lunch to bring to school. And so those clues can kind of inform us, hey, he may be poor. In chapter 3, we learn that Rufus and Kenny actually become friends. They have things in common and they like to play together. So we learn that even though they're both kind of made fun of in different ways, they find camaraderie with each other. Chapter 4. That's what Miss Drew read for us last week. And we learned that Willona, the mom, since she's from Alabama, she's not really used to the cold. She believes that the cold can kill you. And so every time that her kids get ready to go to school, she bundles them up really tight in scarves and mittens and snowsuits and all that type of stuff. And so in chapter 4, it really talks about how the kids have to deal with taking all of those clothes off once they get to school. And poor Joey, the baby, she's only in kindergarten. She's sweating underneath by the time she gets all these clothes off. Chapter 5. Chapter 5, 6, and 7 is what you guys are supposed to read last week, but it's okay. I'll recap those for you as well. Chapter 5 is when we learn about really how difficult Byron can be. He likes to play with matches. And so in chapter 5, we learn about Byron's fascination with matches and playing with them. And it makes his mom furious. And he gets caught playing with matches again. And Mom Willona decides to do something a little bit risque. And she gets some matches of her own. You'll have to read a little bit more into chapter 5 to find out what she does. Chapter 6. All right, in chapter 6, Byron and Kenny are sent on an assignment to the grocery store to get some basic essentials, some milk, bread, and eggs. But when they ask Mom for some money, she's like, you don't need any money. We have an account with the grocery clerk. And Byron and Kenny think, oh no, are we on welfare? And they make a whole big deal about that. And Mom has to explain to them, no, it's a difference. It's not welfare. It's just an IOU account. And so they go to the grocery store, they get the essentials, and they realize an IOU account means I don't have to pay now, but my parents will pay later. And Byron decides to use that to his advantage and get some cookies and a whole bunch of junk that he likes because he knows it'll go on the IOU account. So we're almost to where we're going to pick up today, but let's talk about chapter 7 really quick. Chapter 7, Byron, again, does something else to just drive his parents up a wall. He decides to get a perm. And if you know anything about perms, if you got kinky, coily hair like many of us do, when you put a perm in your hair, it goes straight. And so Byron's hair went straight and it was a little bit discolored and he thought he was looking cool and Dad was like, no. And he ended up shaving Byron's head bald. And it was a really sad day in the Watsons household. Anyways, as you can see, Byron really kind of is a juvenile delinquent. He likes to, toe the line, and he likes to do things that drive his parents up a wall. And so chapter after chapter after chapter, we can see things building up. At the end of chapter 7, something happens. with after Byron gets his hair shaved, something happens and his parents decide to take it a step further and call Willona's mom in Alabama. So we're going to pick up from there in chapter 8. Before we do that, I have a very special guest that I want to bring on. He is a student that I've worked with for the past 2 summers, an excellent student. He cares about his education. He cares about doing his best. And I'm so pleased to introduce and announce Christian Jones. Hey, welcome, Christian. We're so happy to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. Have you been enjoying CCOG Summer Enrichment?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what grade you're going into.
I'm going into 5th grade.
Awesome. And so these lessons are just for you and for kids just like you going into 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. So awesome. Christian is going to be our special reader today, and he's going to begin on chapter 8. And the Watsons go to Birmingham. So please follow along with Christian as he reads chapter 8. It's on you.
Okay. Chapter Ultra Glide. I don't know why we didn't catch on that something different was really going to happen this time. Mama and Dad started acting real strange right after they talked to Grandma Sands. First, Mama started writing in a notebook and adding things up and subtracting things. Then Dad and Joey and Rufus and me started driving all over Flint, buying things for the brown bomber. We stopped at Denise junkyard and bought a new antenna for the radio and 4 new used tires. Then we stopped at Mr. Billy's garage and had the tires put on the car. Then we stopped at the Yankee store and bought some spark plugs and some oil and antifreeze. Then we got our store neighbor, Mr. Johnson, to help put all that stuff in the car. Then we washed and waxed the brown bomber. When Byron walked by while we were working on it, he said, "Y'all done real good. It still looks like a turd on wheels, but I gotta admit, now it looks like a polished turd." We ignored him while Joey cleaned the windows. Me and Rufus washed the seats. Even the parts that were torn and worn away. But the more we washed them, the worse they looked. And Dad ended up going back to the Yankee store and buying some brown and white seat covers for the front seats. The brown bomber looked great. Not almost new, but not almost 15 years older either. We brought Mama out and showed it to her, and she gave us one of those big hand over her mouth smiles. "Well, folks," Dad said, and we all knew he was getting ready to cut up. All it needs now is that final touch, that special something that sets it apart from all the other buckets of bolts on the road. That one piece of all-American engineering that shows that this fine automobile is worthy of the name Brown Bomber. And guesses as to what this is. A new hood thing, I asked. The thing in the middle of the hood was a long chrome rocket that pointed out over the road. The only thing that was wrong with it was that one of the wings of the rocket was broken off. Like with everything else, Dad had a crazy explanation for that. He told us that right after he got the car from Uncle Bud, but both wings were there, but that he had taken it to a special garage and had one wing scientifically and mathematically taken off. When we asked him why he told us that way, when he came back from a long trip, we'd be coming in on a wing and a prayer. That's the kind of junk Dad thinks is funny. "No, Dad," answered my question. "It's not a new hood thing. The one on there now is perfectly fine." "Joey, what's your guess?" "I don't know, Daddy. I don't think anything can make the bomber any better. I think it's perfect." "Bless you, sweetheart." "Rufus, your turn. What do you think?" I don't know, Mr. Watson. I like y'all's cars just fine. I knew there was something I liked about that boy. All right, Willona, what's your guess? I don't know either, Mama said, and rolled her eyes. I think the car is Mom was cutting up too. Oh my God, I can't say it. Real cute, Willona. Well, since Kenneth and Mama have insulted the great brown one, I guess that leaves it up to Rufus and Pumpkin to put the final piece on. Dad handed the keys to Rufus. Rufus, you open the trunk, and Pumpkin, there's a small bag in there. You have the honor of putting what's inside of it on. Rufus popped the trunk open and Joey took a small paper bag out. She turned the bag into everyone and looked inside. Oh, Daddy, I love it. Do you know where it goes? Yes, Daddy. Okay. Time's a wasting. Put it on. She put her hand in the bag and without pulling it out, said, and now the thing that makes this car more perfect. Dad started helping Joey cut up. He said, the final touch, Joey repeated. The final touch, the height of technology, the height of technology. The ultimate in American knowledge, the ultimate in American knowledge. Mama couldn't take any more. For God's sake, Daniel, what is it? It's the pinnacle of Western civilization. It's the pinnacle of Western civilization. Now, Joey, dazzling girl. Joey pulled her hand out of the bag and said, it's a smelly green pipe tree. Mama went, ugh, and walked back into the house. Joey hung the smelly green pine tree from the rear view mirror and scooted out of the car to let me and Rufus smell her fingers. But Dad wasn't through adding things to Brown Bomber. On Saturday, Joey and me got up real early to watch cartoons, and Dad was already brushing his teeth and shaving. I went into the bathroom to watch him. I love the way that shaving soap smells. Hi, Dad. Morning, Kenny. How'd you sleep? Dad said this with his toothbrush in his mouth. Okay, I guess. Then Dad pulled one of his famous tricks on me. He said, Kenny, look, and pointed out in the hallway. Even before I could think, my head turned around and I followed Dad's finger. When I saw nothing and looked back, Dad was smiling a mile a minute, acting like he hadn't done anything, but I noticed that his toothbrush was gone. I let him know he did it for me. Dad, how come you always hide your toothbrush? Why don't you keep yours with ours? Dad laughed. Well, Katie, I guess I don't keep my toothbrush with the rest of yours because, unlike your mother, I was a little boy once just myself. I thought about this for a second, then said, what does that mean? Dad picked up my toothbrush and said, look at this. Not only is the instrument perfect for brushing teeth, it has a wonderful usage too. You see, Kenny, I know that in a little boy's eyes, there isn't anything in the world that is better for general cleaning than a toothbrush, and the greatest thing about it is that what a good rinse afterward no one can tell. What is it used for? I also know that the best toothbrush for cleaning stuff is always someone else's. So rather than wondering what my toothbrush last cleaned, I think it's better that it only goes in places that I know about. Dad was right. I caught Byron using mine once too. Shine up some quarters and another time to brush Blackie's teeth. I didn't really care, but Blackie didn't like it. That was the only time he ever growled at someone in his own family. Dad was stirring the soap dish up with his shaving brush. I got only close to the sink to smell the soap. Dad painted his face with the soap, then bent down and rinsed it off. I know it sounds crazy, but he always did this twice. He said it really made your beard super soft. He learned that because he used to work in a barbershop. When he was a little boy, that's where he also learned that if you go to the barbershop, you've got to make sure your neck is real clean. Otherwise, the barber talks about you like a dog after you leave. So Dad said as he put the second coat of soap on his face, let me guess why you're standing so close. Could it be that you need to soap your face and hold you up here while you shave it off? It's been a long time since... Oh man, I'm way too old for that. Besides, I'm starting to get a real mustache. Look, I stuck my upper lip out for Dad to see. Where? Dad leaned down and looked real hard. I can't see it. Here, look. Maybe closer to the light. Dad bent over and picked me up to the mirror. I automatically turned my head sideways when I saw my reflection. Some of the time I forget all about my lazy eye.
Wow, thank you, Christian. I mean, those Watsons are
Yes,
something,
ma'am.
aren't they? Would you ever let somebody use your toothbrush? No, and they're talking about, letting the dog use the toothbrush and stuff. That's really crazy. I'm interested to find out what's going to happen next. But you all who are watching are going to need to keep reading. It'll be on your assignments on the link tree. So keep reading to find out what happens next. Thank you, Christian, for reading so beautifully, so fluently. And we hope that we'll see you soon sometime. You can say bye to the people and we'll see you later.
Bye.
All right, guys, before we go into this week's reading skill, I wanted to just review some of the skills that we've talked about so far. In week 1, we talked about inferencing, and inferencing is when we take our background knowledge, add it to our text clues, and then we're able to make an inference. Week 2, Miss Drew taught us about context clues, and she gave us an acronym IDEAS to help us remember that when we come to an unknown word, if we don't know what that word is, we can use I, inferences, D, definitions, E, examples, A, antonyms, or S, synonyms to help us figure out what does that word mean. Now, this week, I'm coming to you guys teaching you about the skill compare and contrast. Now, for 3rd through 5th graders, compare and contrast switches a little bit per grade. So in 3rd grade, you start comparing and contrasting books by the same author. And so we are reading The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. Well, Christopher Paul Curtis has also written other books, and on the back, we can see that he's written The Mighty Miss Malone and Bud Not Buddy. This is another really good one. And so in 3rd grade, you may read this book and Bud Not Buddy, for example, and then compare, are there similar settings in these 2 books? Are there similar characters? That type of thing, based off of what the other books that he's written. In 4th grade, you compare and contrast different points of views. So there are 3 main points of views: first, second, and third person point of view. And you may compare a first person point of view with a third person point of view, for example. And then in 5th grade, which is what we're going to work on and focus on today, you focus on comparing and contrasting characters within a book. So today we're going to talk about what comparing and contrasting is, and then we're going to put it into practice comparing and contrasting 2 characters from this story. So first, let's talk about what is it. Compare. If we could define it, we would say that to compare something is to use details from the text or from the story to tell what is the same about 2 things. Contrast, on the other hand, is when we use details from the story to tell what is different about 2 things. So where do we put these details? I'm glad that you asked. So I got my little notebook here. We put these details in a Venn diagram, and I'm going to explain what all this is in just a minute. But a Venn diagram is just a graphic organizer to help us be able to visualize what is the same and then what is different about 2 things. So here we have our little Venn diagram. So compare, we talked about, we can use details from the story to tell what is similar or the same about 2 things. Contrast, we use details from the story. That's the key word, details from the story, to tell what is different about 2 things. So when I figure out from the story what things are the same or what things are different, then I put that information into a Venn diagram. So in this Venn diagram, I took Kenny and Byron, and I decided that I was going to compare and contrast those 2 characters. So over here in this blue circle, I have Kenny, and I have the word contrast, which means everything underneath Kenny's name is going to be what is different about Kenny. Over here, I have Byron, and it says contrast as well, because everything over here is going to be what's different about Byron. In the middle here, I have compare, because it's going to be everything that is the same or similar about Kenny and Byron. So let's look at what information I put in my Venn diagram. First, Kenny. Kenny is a middle child. Byron is not. Kenny loves to read. He's very smart. Byron is not. And number 3, Kenny stays out of trouble. And we've learned by now, even with the recap, Byron likes to get in trouble. So all these things are what are different about Kenny. Now let's look at Byron. Byron is the oldest child. He has failed a couple of grades. And they call him a lot a juvenile delinquent. So we just contrasted Kenny with Byron and said how they are different. There are signal words that you can look for in the story, or in any story really, to be able to tell, oh, the author is about to give me a contrast between two different things. Some of these signal words are different from, however, although, and on the other hand. You want to look out for those signal words to see when you're getting ready to contrast two different things. Well, let's look at Kenny and Byron and compare them. Let's look at how they are the same. They are both Watsons. They're both part of the Watson family. And they both attend Clark Elementary. Now, of course, there's so many more things that we could say that are the same about them, but those are just the two that I pulled out. Some signal words to note when the author is about to tell you a compare or something that is the same about two things would be the word alike or both. And we put that information right here in the middle where our two circles overlap. So that's our Venn diagram. Again, the signal words for comparing are similar to, alike, same as, both. Our signal words for contrast are different from, however, although, and on the other hand. So boys and girls, while you are reading your books, any book really, even nonfiction, I want you to ask yourself what is being compared and how are they different. I have enjoyed my evening with you guys. I hope you learned something. I hope you took something away. Please make sure that you share, comment, share it with somebody who you feel could really benefit from these lessons. Before I leave, you know we got to bring in the word. So I'm going to be reading from the Purpose Driven Life devotional for kids by Rick Warren, and I'm going to read day 3, Meaning of a Name. This is from Genesis chapter 17, verses 15 through 16. God also said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her." Sarai was married to a well-known man, so for the most of her life, she was known simply as Abraham's wife. Imagine if everyone always called you by another name rather than your own. Mary's kid, Susan's sister, Andrew's friend. Then at 90 years old, Sarai became well known herself. She had a baby. That got her recognized. But this new fame was all from God. God blessed her husband for his faith, and he blessed Sarai too. To show how pleased he was, God gave them new names. Names were important in Bible times. Names indicated personality, standing, or family. Sarai's new name, Sarah, meant princess. Ask your parents how they came up with your name. Did you know God has names for you too? And if you know what your name means, put it in the comments. My name means English. That's what my mom told me, that Brittany means English. Did you know God has names for you too? He calls you beloved, royalty, and his child. He also calls you names that fit with his plans for your life. Perhaps God's name for you will be doctor, Olympian, mechanic, or artist. When God gives you a name, He's telling you who He created you to be. As you grow up, He may even give you a new name, just like He did Sarai. I like that. What does your name mean? Find out what your name means and hold it close. It's time for us to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you for being with us today as we are learning to grow better in our reading and just grow closer to you through our devotion. Please allow us, God, to share it with someone who could benefit and allow everything that we've learned to take root. We thank you, God. We bless your holy name. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, I will see you all when I see you. Next week, there'll be our last week. I know it'll be our last week. There'll be another great lesson for you guys. Please remember, parents, that the resources for this week's lesson on compare and contrast are on our link tree. You can find the free resources up there. And big kids, students, if you complete the assignments, make sure that you submit them, email them back to ccogsummerenrichment@gmail.com so that you can get credit and hopefully be on next week's shout out list. Enjoy your evening. Keep reading, keep reading, keep reading. Bye-bye.